the instructions? Because we be lost without them. We don't know what to do. Don't know which way to go. Didn't know up from down. Didn't know a slave from a free man. Some of us still don't. We're going to find out about that tonight, though. In this chapter, dealing with this inconstancy, boys, have your pencils and papers handy. Okay. Be ready. If you can't spell it, write it in the best way you can. Just unfold it later on, okay? But be ready, because we're going to go into this chapter tonight, and we're going to be able to find out what blessings Allah has sent to us through the noble prophet. Now, speaking about the blessing and the chapter and the noble prophet, let me ask the Grand Master Secretary, she'll come before you, and chapter 41 on the Holy Quran, the Circle 7 Holy Quran, the Adab Quran, because more asked about the Adab lessons, more, let me tell you something about the Adab lessons. If you ever read the Divine Constitution Bylaws, if you've ever read the Circle 7 Quran, well, all 71 chapters, that's the Adab lessons. Okay? Islam. So with that in mind, let me ask the Secretary to read chapter 41, Holy Instruction from our Prophet, Inconstancy.
Islam, Brother Chairman, thank you. Islam, Moors, first of all, I want to rise, giving all praises to our Father, God Allah, giving a most special honor to our Prophet, Noble Drew Ali, the last prophet in these days and times. Giving honor to our Moorish American national government, giving honor to all of our officials, our staff, our grand body, our Moorish citizens, swift angels, divine ministers, giving honor to our guests, giving honor to whom honor is due. Islam. Chapter 41, Holy Instructions from the Prophet, Inconstancy. Nature urgeth thee to thee, O man. Therefore, guard thyself at all times against it. Thou art from the womb of thy mother, various and wavering. From the loins of thy father inheriteth thou instability. How then shalt thou be firm? Those who gave thee a body furnished it with weakness, but he who gave thee a soul armed thee with resolution. Employ it, and thou art wise. Be wise, and thou art happy. Let him who doeth well beware how he boasteth of it, for rarely is it of his own will. Is not the event of an impulse from without, born of uncertainty, enforced by accident, dependent on somewhat else? To thee and to accident is due the praise. Beware of irresolution in the intent of thy actions. Beware of instability in the execution. So shalt thou triumph over two great failings of thy nature. What reproacheth reason more than to act contrarieties? What can suppress the tendencies to these but firmness of mind? The inconstant feeleth that he changeth, but he knoweth not why. He seeth that he escapeth from himself, but he perceiveth not how. Be thou incapable of change in that which is right, and men will rely upon thee. Establish unto thyself principles of action, and see that thou ever act according to them. So shall thy passions have no rule over thee. So shall thy constancy ensure unto thee the good thou possessest, and drive from thy door misfortune. Anxiety and disappointment shall be strangers to thy gates. Suspect not evil in anyone until thou seest it. When thou seest, forget it not. Whoso hath been an enemy cannot be a friend, for man mendeth not his faults. How should his actions be right, who hath no rule of his life? Nothing can be just, which proceedeth not from reason. The inconstant hath no peace in his soul, neither can be at ease who can with himself with. His life is unequal, his motions are irregular, his soul changeth with the weather. Today he loveth thee, tomorrow thou art detested by him, and why? Himself knoweth not wherefore he now hateth. Today he is the tyrant, tomorrow thy servant is less humble. power will be servile where there is no subjection. Today he is profuse. Tomorrow he grudges unto his mouth that which it should eat. Thus it is with him who knoweth not moderation. Who shall say of the chameleon he is black, when the moment after the verdure of the grass overspreadeth him? Who shall say of the inconstant he is joyful, when his next breath shall be spent in sighing? What is the life of such a man but the phantom of a dream? In the morning he riseth happy, at noon he is on the rack. This hour he is a god, the next below a worm. One moment he laugheth, the next he weepeth. He now willeth, in an instant he willeth not, and in another he knoweth not whether he willeth or not. Yet neither ease nor pain have fixed themselves on him. Neither is he waxed greater or become less. Neither hath he had cause for laughter or reason for his sorrow. Therefore shall none of them abide with him. The happiness of the inconstant is as a palace built on the surface of the sand. The blowing of the wind carrieth away its foundation. What wonder then that it falleth? But what exalted form is this, that hitherward directs its uninterrupted course, whose foot is on earth, whose head is above the clouds? On his brow sitteth majesty. Steadiness is in his port, and in his heart reigneth tranquility. Though obstacles appear in his way, he deigneth not to look down upon them. Though heaven and earth oppose his passage, he proceedeth. The mountains sink beneath his tread. The waters of the ocean are dried up under the sole of his foot. The tiger throweth herself across his way in vain. The spots of the leopard him unregarded. He marcheth through the embattled legions. With his hands he putteth aside the terrors of death. Storms roar against his shoulders, but are not able to shake them. The thunder bursteth over his head in vain. The lightning serveth but to show the glories of his countenance. His name is resolution. He cometh from the utmost part of the earth. He seeth happiness afar off before him. His eye discerns her temple beyond the limits of the pole. He walketh up to it. He entereth boldly, and he remaineth there forever. Establish thy heart, O man, in that which is right, and then know the greatest of human is to be immutable. Islam.
Thank you, Sister Secretary. Islam students, we want to welcome everyone to the National Moorish Sunday School, because out from our Sunday School, where we get our lessons together, where we are taught well the lessons of Noble Drew Ali, out from our Sunday School will and will always come the guidance of the nation. Islam, this is what our purpose is. Our purpose is to re-educate ourselves with these lessons. They've been around for about 100 years, but they have not been enforced. And the reason why they have not been enforced, because they did not take these lessons to heart. All right? So we're here today to go about the business of man. And you must remember, the prophet had a reason for saying that you proclaim your nationality before the government in which you live. For those of you who think that you have been living within the government of the USA, or the status quo, if you will, then I assure you, as the song old Marvin Gaye used to sing, that ain't living. You cannot call that living when you're under the jurisdiction of another man's government and you do not have any freedom of your own. That is not living. So what we want to do is go into the ninth chapter and let us demonstrate. Remember more that this is the whole instructions, okay, from the noble prophet. And the master word for tonight is inconstancy, okay? Inconstancy is defined, and we're going to take it to another level. Usually, when we hear the word inconstancy, we confuse it with the word instability, okay? But you must remember, instability was last week's chapter, okay? Now, the prophet is going to bring you a whole nother ball game here, because in instability, We found out last week in chapter 40, dealing with instability, that had to do with some wavering and insecurity, change and unrest and steadiness, fluctuation. That was instability. That which is unstable. It's not founded. You can't depend upon it. Okay. But tonight's chapter is dealing with inconstancy. Now, how close is instability and inconstancy? Well, the closest that they have, the only thing they really have in common is the fact both of them are enemies. Okay? And they both must be approached as like that, because the prophet clearly let us know that he who has been an enemy cannot be a friend. So if you accept inconstancy or instability as your friend, then there's no wonder why you're suffering and in misery most of the time, okay? Or why it is that your life has been unhappy, up one minute, down the next, okay? Or if you want to know why it is that the people have not been freed, then you find that they have not addressed the issue of instability nor inconstancy, okay? And speaking of inconstancy, let us go to another level where we want to define the word inconstancy. Well, the first word that we're not used to when it comes to this word, inconstancy, is unfaithfulness. Write that down. Write it down. Right. Unfaithfulness. I know you say, well, what in the world got to do with inconstancy? Well, bear with us more. That's what the class is all about. We're here to teach, okay? The first definition for inconstancy is unfaithfulness. Then we're going to go into another level, almost the same degree, but infidelity. That's I-N-F-I-D-E-L-I-T-Y. Infidelity. Okay? There's another word dealing with inconstancy, meaning changeable. They're changeable. Okay? Now, we know about change because we change the fashion, we change style, we change shoes, we change underwear. So we know about change. Sometimes we don't know how to change our mind, though. Okay? Another word for inconstancy is disloyalty. That's what I said, disloyalty. So those of you who's in these different relationships and you find out that someone ain't quite holding steadfast, you ain't got to keep talking about, hey, you ain't faithful to me, you ain't loyal to me. Just say, why are you so inconstant? Hey, okay. Another definition for inconstancy is cannot be trusted. Here we go. Okay? Cannot be trusted. Also, there's another word, being not regular. In other words, not steady, not regular. Okay? Now, for those of you who know it, they say, well, how come you can't be trusted with inconstancy? Well, for those of you who have ever walked across the floor, any kind of surface, and you felt that it was sort of rickety, and you was really a little shy about every step that you took, because you know that that surface was not constant, and you know you couldn't trust your weight and your future steps or the uncertainty of that special surface. Okay? So now you're coming into the area of inconstancy. Okay? And inconstancy has a lot to do with when it comes down to something that you cannot depend upon. But here's the master word, a definition when it comes down to inconstancy, and that is self-betrayal. Self-betrayal. Now, I guess you might say, well, what in the world is self-betrayal? Well, it means just that. You have betrayed yourself. So if you betray yourself, then it's not strange that you're going to betray somebody else. Again, you can't be trusted because you can't be trusted with your own self. Now, we're going to go into these definitions in this chapter and find out why in the world would our Sunday school instructor be calling inconstancy and dealing with unfaithfulness. Well, let's find out about that and see exactly what we're talking about here. First of all, let's look highest level of spirit life when he calls an old man, okay? So he's calling on your higher intellect. Remember when Yehoshua got with Barada Rabo, and Barada Rabo thought he knew everything, but he got to coming off all crazy, and Yehoshua, he didn't address and say, idiot. What he said, he just said, Barada Rabo, are you not a mastermind? So he called his attention to one of his highest attributes, one of his higher purposes, okay? Well, like so, the prophet is calling your attention here to one of your higher attributes, old man, old spirit man, okay? Because wisdom is now speaking of the highest plane of spirit life. So when he calls your attention to nature, nature is what urges thee to inconstancy, okay? Which is our subject chapter, holy instructions from the prophet, inconstancy. And it's right here in Ayat 1. The prophet don't usually do that, but he's holding steadfast this time. Nature is what urges thee to inconstancy, O man. Therefore, guard thyself at all times, against it. Now, you must remember, when it comes to times, and he did say plural, then he's talking about the past, the present, and the future. These are times, okay? And like so, you find out that when you're dealing with time, this all times a finite duration, okay? Finite duration. That's the definition for the word time, is finite duration. So when the prophet says, guard yourself at all times against it, that means anything that has to do with the duration while you are here in human form. Why? Because he's speaking about this nature. Let's define the word nature. Let's go into this word nature again, okay? Because he said, look, nature is what urges you to inconstancy. So that means that since inconstancy is not so good, it's got to do with unfaithfulness. And if you wonder where the faithfulness comes from, let us go to the three-step ladder of salvation. This is the first time the prophet really introduced us to the word faith, okay? That's the second step on the three-step ladder of salvation, okay? And faith is what man knows is truth, okay? So if you're dealing with unfaithfulness, then it's letting you know right there it's something you don't know. And if you do know, you're not being what you know. So now we're going into the nature of the say, when you're dealing with nature, you're talking about human life. Definition, write this down. Definition for nature is human life, carnal nature, okay? A fleshy clothes, fleshy things. You're talking about the mundane character. When you talk about nature, again, you're talking about that carnal nature, human life. Now, let me explain where this is coming from, okay? I know most of you are already on top of it already. All this right here comes from chapter 1, okay? When you look at chapter 1, then the prophet clearly says that these soul attributes that came about are beautiful. A multitude of lessons man must learn upon the plane of soul. And here, he tarries many ages. Here comes that time again, okay? Here he tarries many ages until the lessons are all learned, okay? Lesson, what lesson can you possibly learn? Because we're here to teach our people their nationality and their divine creed. There's some lessons to be learned here, okay? Upon the boundary of the plane of soul, the ether began to vibrate slow and still, and then the essence is, took on a final garb, the perfume, the odor, and the true sensations, and all the love was clothed in flesh. And man was clothed in flesh. Here we go. Man was clothed in flesh. So this, remember, in chapter 1, a little earlier, the prophet speaks about how man, spirit man, okay, was put into his soul in order for him to grow a pace. Remember that? Mm-hmm. Okay. So when you hear, you let me know that in developing this right here, he was clothed in flesh, ayat 1, where this word nature is coming from, and we use the definition as speaking about carnal nature, mundane character, flesh clothes, okay, fleshy things. What about that human life? Okay, all this has to do with nature, because the nature took on, this was the final garb that you took on. But you must remember, this was the characteristics of something that you yourself created, because in the fall, Moors, you must remember that the very essence of you is likened to the source to which you came, because you're just a seed, okay? You're a seed from the great God Allah. In other words, you're spirit, very much divine, okay? So when you took on a carnal nature, you had an option, being God. You had an option. You didn't have to submit yourself to being human. You didn't have to submit yourself to that carnal nature, but you did. Okay? You got to go in and out different spirits and different ether planes and different manifests, plants and animals and creeping things, and you begin to enjoy those things because you begin to develop feelings. Okay? We're going to get into that a little later on. Feelings, passions, emotions, all for running around not minding your business. Because had you been dealing with the business of man, then you would then have it evolving back to your spirit plane. But instead of that, you got to mind some other people's business, like giraffes and lions and monkeys and fish and things. And then you went on to the next level. You start signifying in the next man business. Okay? And this is where all this was because a carnal nature has formed. Okay? Dealing with the oldest, but feel certain things you develop what's called a false sensation. Okay, I know in the earlier part of the chapter it speaks about the true sensations. But see, when you got true sensations, these are when the ethers are vibrating the way they're supposed to. These are true sensations. In other words, when the spirit moves, when the law moves, or divine things move in the order in which it's supposed to, that's the true sensation. But a false sensation is, oh, baby, that feels so good. That's a false sensation. But why? Because it's not evolving you back or in any kind of way to your highest plane of spirit life. If it don't have to do with that, it's false sensation. Okay? So, and reading on, we go ahead and come back to the side one. But I want to read this so you can understand exactly what this nature is all about. Nature, O man, therefore guard thyself at all times against it. Thou art from the womb of thy mother, various and wavering. From the loins of thy father inherit thy instability. How then shalt thou be firm? Okay? Now you must remember, when you inherit the instability from the father, you're going back to the last chapter, chapter 40, which was the holy instruction from the prophet dealing with instability. Okay? So here you go with speaking about instability in a chapter, okay, that has to do with inconstancy. To let you know that both of these are weakness, which obviously any kind of thing about a weakness about you is automatically a foe. It's automatically an enemy. Now let's look at how all this happened to come about. Because remember, the master word right now is nature. Those who gave thee a body furnish it with weakness. So now you already know where the weakness is coming from. It's all coming from that human nature. Okay? But he who gave thee a soul armed thee with resolution. If you're able to employ it, and thou art wise, okay, be wise, and thou art happy. So now, these first three ayats is letting us know exactly where it is that the nature comes from, the weakness is coming from, and it's also letting you know that you also has got an option. You've got some tools that you can use to ward yourself against this, right? You don't have to submit to this. You don't, certain things is just not requisite to man, okay? Especially those things that we have determined, and the Prophet lets us know that is an enemy to you, okay? He's saying anything that stops you from being God is an enemy. Now, you can wrap around the nighttime is the right time all you want to, okay? But the right time being the nighttime being the right time, but not the light time, okay? So, and there's no light there, so therefore that's not it, okay? So what we have to deal with right now is how is it that from the womb of the mother can you get various and wavering, all right? Now, I don't know how many of you know that much about the womb, but you ask any of the sisters that ever had a baby, they'll tell you about that womb and how it's not consistent. In fact, if you notice, if you remember, those of you who, well, the sister could tell you more about it than I could, but the thing about it is, while you was in the womb, all right, it was during this time that so she didn't know what she wanted to eat. Appetite was various and wavering. Sometimes she was hot, she was cold. Sometimes she was irritable for no reason. Okay, other times she was happy. Sometimes she was able to teach the baby while in the womb. Other times she didn't like when the baby was not his mate, didn't even like the daddy. Okay, or the father, if you're father, I'm sorry. Let me use the right word. Okay, don't want to get in my baby daddy thing. And during this time, the child is developing. Okay, the womb itself is expanding. If you notice what the womb is in the initial status, it's so small, so minute, that you almost have to put it on a microscope to really take a good look at it, all right? But nevertheless, it's got everything about it to bring forth the life. But you must remember, now, the only thing that the mother and the father can give to the baby is a body of flesh. Okay? Make no mistake about it. This is the reason why in the first part of our questionnaire, the prophet asked a simple question, who made you? So therefore, you would not be looking, because I know when I first saw the question, I was like most of us, I answered the question to my mom and daddy, maybe, So, but that's because I didn't know any more than the fleshy part at the time, okay? But then I found out later, as I went more into the sciences of the Moors, that I found that there was something else that was added unto me, unlike what I could see, all right? And this is the same thing. So when it comes down to the loins of the father, how you can inherit the instability, well, then again, brother and sister, well as sister, no. There is nothing more inconstant in the world than the loins of a man. One minute, if you get real scared, he can't how to find the thing, okay? If you get real cold, it's another disappearing act. It's going to show up on it. Another time, they're trying to get it ready. He can't even hardly put his pants on. So now that is inconstancy. Because fear will grow so much of it. If he gets scared, you can't find it. And okay, so and you wonder how it is that you develop these same kind of inconstancy. Well, look what it was that put the flesh there in the first place. You must remember it was a human seed, just a human seed. That's all that the Father could put there. Okay, was a human seed. He did not have the power to give you the breath of life, meaning a soul, a spirit to move about with, and a soul to think with. Okay, this here is the breath of life that was breathed into the nostrils, and then you became a living thing. Okay, a living soul. All right, that's how it works. But what we're talking about now is how in the world did this inconstancy come into the picture? Because that's our subject matter. And faithfulness, how in the world that we come to a point, being God, and we end up not knowing nothing. I'm talking about just changing like the Eastern change, okay? The prophet let you know that those who gave their body furnished it with weakness. But he who gave thee soul armed resolution. Well, when it comes to the definition, dealing with that inconstancy, and when the prophet said, God willed thyself against it, but when you're dealing with resolution, you're talking about reason. You're talking about how to resolve a matter, how to make a decision. Those of you who've ever been in court, you know about a ruling, okay? When a ruling is when a decision has been determined with someone that has jurisdiction option to use reason. Okay? You have to use reason before you grab that remote control and turn the TV on. You have to use reason before you turn the key into the ignition of a car. You got to use reason for everything that you do. Before you put your clothes on, tie your shoes up, it doesn't matter. Okay? You have the instant voice. Some of us take it so much for granted, we don't really exercise in reason. But reason must be there at all costs. Now, we're going to find a little later that the intent governs a lot of how you use that reason. All right? But the main thing is the fact that you have got this gift, and it did not come from your earthly parents. Okay? This gift of resolution did not come from them. All right? You got your weakness from them. Okay? Because you're talking about that human nature. That nature that springs forth from fleshy things. What's the fleshy thing? A womb is a fleshy thing. All right? That penis is a fleshy thing. So we're talking about a nature that springs forth from fleshy things. Okay? Even the old heart to be thumped behind the rib, that's a fleshy thing too. And somebody said, well, where's the place in the middle in the heart? We're talking about the heart in the chest. Well, I don't know what happened, because now you can make heart transplants. Now, what about that? Okay? So somebody took the other heart out and transplant another heart in there. Now, where's your option to meet Allah? So that's not the heart we're talking about. Okay? Again, we speak about the fleshy things here. All right? And we want to also recognize the fact that here in these great lessons, you're able, just like in Acts 6, where the Bible said we are teaching our people their nationality and their divine creed. Okay? One has to do with the earthly, and one has to do with the fleshy thing, one has to do with the manifest. That's your nationality. Okay? Well, the other one, your divine creed, has to do with the spirit part of you, the God part of you. Okay? Like so, with our lessons, that the prophecy, holy instructions, that's exactly what they're able to make the distinction between that which is fleshy from that which is not flesh, that which is spiritual. Okay. So when it comes down to these making these decisions, the key here to becoming a mastermind, becoming a Moorish scientist, becoming a conscious person, a person of wisdom, is to be able to make the distinction of what it is about you that's godly as opposed to that which is about you that's fleshy. Okay? Now, what about the senses? All right? The senses is primarily dealing with what? The fleshy thing. The things you can see with the carnal eye, but yet still, although they're essential in watching you, how long can you trust those eyes, the things that you see? Okay? Yeah, you might have seen her with him, but that was your lying eye, but she won't with him. Okay? Or you might have heard something, but you didn't really hear it, because why? Those ears that you heard that with, they want the truth no way. So what we're talking about, when you talk about that nature more, it's key that you be able to separate the divinity from the matter. This is the metaphysics. This is a mastermind. A mastermind is one who's able to make the distinction. Now get your pencils and papers handy. I'm going to go back into this word nature for a minute, okay? Because this is going to help you with understand and enjoy the rest of the chapter. Okay, get the pencils ready. The word nature. Okay? When it comes to nature, you deal with things that's unknown on our native plane. And what is our native plane? Because the prophet speaks about how we're able to feed from the ethers of our native planes. What is our native plane? Our native plane is spirit. Our native plane is divinity. Our native plane is dealing with those things that's infinite. Okay, that's our native plane. That's as high as atonement that we, or attainment that we dare even think about. That's what we're talking about, perfected man, all right? But let's talk about nature. And I'm going to break it down for you in such a way where that I want you to look at the plane. Let's come down off the spirit plane, and let's look at this okay? And I have to do it this way so that we can have a clear conception of the work that we're called to do by becoming back one with Allah. Now, write this down. There's certain things that you don't have on our native plane, but you have to deal with it with nature. With nature, you have to deal with fear, dismay, death, joy, sadness. Oh, let's just say passion, okay? Oh, my goodness, pain. But this is not, none of these things are known in our native plane. As gods, we don't know nothing about this, okay? But they're here. And the reason why I'm pointing them out is because it's a part of the mundane world. It's a part of the human, the fallen humanity, okay? We don't even know about division on the spirit plane. Little simple things more like cold, hot, dry, wet, okay? We don't know about these things on the spirit plane. The spirit don't have no need for what is cold or hot or wet, dry, okay? All right. What about other things like fast? You know how we like them cars, and we got some men or women that think they fast. That's another kind of speed, though. But then they got slow. You got certain things that's height or depth, growth, size. And then you got numbers, letters. None of this do we need or is there access or do we have on the spirit plane. All this has to do with nature. Okay? Now, we can get a little personal about this thing since we got to find out about it anyway. But what about nations and government, nationality and families? Okay? On the spirit plane, we don't have any need for nations, government, families, because all truth is one. In fact, you just deal with your principles alone, and they will become so consolidated on the spirit plane that they just become one thing. It wouldn't even be a thing, just a breath. And love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice be all in that breath. Because we are that breath made manifest. That's how we're able to call it out. Love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice. It's what the breath is like when it's still. Okay? So I had to point these things out to you. You can add more words to this. Okay? These are just little things about nature dealing with that, the fall. Okay? Because you must remember, when we gave a definition for inconstancy, we were speaking about unfaithfulness and trust, those things that's not regular, self-betrayal, okay, infidelity. All this comes from human nature. Okay? And that's why it causes us to be inconstant. Up one minute, down the next. Woe is me. That move made me so mad, I lost my mind. Yep, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Now that you ain't got your mind no more, now what are you? Okay? So we have to point these things out because when we're talking about the exercise of those tools that we're able to use, like the actions of the soul. Okay, we're not even going to tools that works up of the mind. Let's talk about the actions of the soul. And among these is reason. Okay? Thinking, reason, willing, understanding, remembrance. These are the actions. But these are also the attributes that we must exercise if we want to get away from the mundane thing. Get away from those things we just listed to you. Okay? It's not that we want to get away from it, but you have to know what it is if you want to perfect yourself, all right? The prophet goes on to say, let him who doeth well beware how he boasts of it, because rarely is it of his own will. And, we're quick. We think we have done something somebody else ain't done or accomplished something someone else does. We start bragging. I did this, I did that. This is mine, and as a result of that, you have not taken the in consideration, would you have done that to be able to do it had it not been for other people that was there? Okay? If you built a skateboard, then the question is, who made the wheels before you even thought about a skateboard? Who else made wheels? Or who else made a board? You just had to take the wheels and the board and put together called a skateboard. But and you brag, oh, I made the skateboard. But what about the people that's using it? What good would it be if they weren't around to even ride on a skateboard? And what about the wheel? Where'd you get that from? Because you didn't invent the wheel. Someone already had a wheel, ball bearings and all, okay? So what we're saying is that when it comes down to be careful how you boast and brag about how you do well, because you must admit, oh, this is part of the mundane, or this is part of that nature, okay? It's not the event of an impulse from a thought born of uncertainty, enforced by accident, dependence on someone else. So in other words, it's not strange when the events and things don't happen to you. For example, we're all on a conference call tonight. This is not strange. Everyone on this call asked to be here. They're looking for themselves at a higher level, something that they can get and grow with, something they can develop with. You're looking for the best out of this. No matter if you don't like to even hear my voice, you're still looking for the best. You grab hold of something, maybe some little morsel of blessing might fall out of his mouth or something I can use, okay? So the thing about it is, this is just an event, okay? It's just an event. It's called a conference call. It's just an event. But how did it come about, okay? It's not that, if you really want to look at it, if we fulfill the promises of Noble Drew Ali, okay? So it's to others say that, oh, you know what, I just happened to dial a number accidentally and I just got on the counter. No, you didn't. Okay? And the thing about it is depending upon something else. What else is it that this conference call is depending upon, okay? Then again, we found out, now that we know where to come from, that it ain't no accident. And even we thought it was, to be into accident is due to praise. Because it wasn't for you, it wasn't for it would be nothing of it, okay? Because out of this, we're able to find the promises out of the wide, find means of good, okay? So beware of irresolution, Moors, all right? Irresolution is when you have an indecision. You're not using reason, okay? You're wavering and you're uncertain whenever you have irresolution. So beware of irresolution. But the key here is the word intent. Okay? And intent is when you aim at something, you plan something, you have an objective, all right? You're meaning to do so, you got a purpose for it when you have an intent. So the Bible says, beware of irresolution, making the most bad decisions, okay, not using good reason, is the intent of your action. This is before you do it. That means that you have the God powers about you to think, okay, to exercise one of the greatest attributes of the soul, and that's reason. Before you do something, you've got, although we don't want to talk about time, but let's say it's less than a split second. You've already decided or used the intent or used the exercise of reason. You made a decision exactly how you're going to do that. If someone come up on you, if they may be somewhat of aggressive, but even at that time, that split second, you've got the decision to make where you can exercise reason, where you can counteract that particular aggression, okay? So the Bible speaks about you exercise reason in the intelligence, but beware of when you don't use reason, okay? This is what he means by irresolution. When he's talking about beware of if you don't use reason in the intent of your action, there ain't no sense in complaining. Oh, as a result, okay, because there you go, you know what, I should have. Does that sound familiar? I should have, or I could have did this, I would have did that, I could have, would have, should have. That's because you didn't use reason in the first place, okay? You didn't exercise reason in the very intent. What did you intend for it to happen? What did you intend to do? action. It doesn't matter who the action is with, who he or she may be, or it, the case may be. You should always slow down enough. It ain't going nowhere. Okay? We don't want to deal with competition because that's a deliberate thing to put one aggressively against another. Okay? But otherwise, and outside of a fight, outside of a boxing ring or a football game, or whatever the case may be, you've got time to exercise reason. Okay? That's the one thing I like about being down the islands. Everything seems to be moving slow. Ain't nobody wearing no watch hardly because they ain't wrapped up with time. Okay? So that means they got time to exercise reason before they open their mouth and say something all out the side of their neck or something, okay? They got time to deal with their intent. What did you intend to do? And this is what happened to most of you who you have ever been to a court of law, as they call it, court of law here in the West. I don't know what that means, but they call it that anyway. But anyway, nevertheless, the thing about it, the judge will often make a decision based upon intent. Okay? The intent would determine whether or not it was first-degree murder or whether it was homicide. Okay? The intent. Did he have time to think about it? Oh, he went all the way home, got a gun, and came back? So, well, what in the world did he intend to do? Well, he intended to go home. What did he do? He intended to get a gun. He knew he had a gun there. Okay? Then he come back to the bar. Okay? With the gun. Okay? So this is how the judge is able to make a decision and say, he's looking at the intent. What did you intend to do? He knows you didn't use reason. Ain't a judge in the world, no, it's impossible. You could not have been thinking. Because now you got first degree electric chair. Anyhow, the problem also he says, when it comes down to the actions, you speak about the deeds of engagement, achievements, and proceedings. Beware of instability, which is dealing with unsteadiness, insecurity, shakiness. Beware of instability in the execution. Okay? That means before you act on it, before you exercise, you execute that particular thought. You had the thought first. Okay? That's what the intent is. You had time enough to think before you picked up that phone and start slandering that sister. You knew better to talk about that brother like that. But no, you're going to pick up the phone, okay? And you're going to call somebody, knowing good well the intent was to do what? Accuse that brother or sister on some occasion at all that may harm that brother or sister. You know what the intent of the action was before you did it. This is the reason why the prophet said, look, you beware of the instability in the execution of this thing. You think about it before you act on it. This is what the prophet made. He says, by the time you violated a European law, you done already broke his law. Why? Because the prophet deals with the sin, not the crime. All right? The sin lies in the wish and in the desire, not in the act. See what I'm saying? So, in other words, the prophet dealing with the intent. What were you thinking or lack thereof? Okay? Now, what he says, in the execution, shows how their triumph over two great failings of thy what? Of thy nature. Okay? Remember, we go all the way back to Ayat 1, deal with that nature again. That human life, that carnal nature, that mundane, that flesh. Where did it come from? All right? So here we go. We got two great failures of the nature. We know about some of these enemies. But these enemies is causing us to be a failure. Well, either you're going to be a success or you're going to be a failure. What is the purpose of you being here? You're here to create an area of perfected man. Are you successful in being a perfected man, being God again? If you're not, then you're a failure. Why are you failing? Well, here's two of the reasons right here. Irresolution in the intent of your action and the instability in the execution of those actions. That's what, these two things right there, that's why it could just get you to thinking, you would save what? Yourself. Get on in this class, and you start committing just to save yourself, and Moorish America is going to be just fine. Okay? The reason why the Moorish America are having a problem over the last 80-something years because they won't think it. They was not exercising intent before they act. Okay? So they was acting like NBC. Okay? Not realizing that the intent was doing what? Keeping us as the people enslaved. Okay? That's the reason why the Moorish might know what no one heard. They've been reading the divine constitution forever. Well, how many times have you exercised the word government? That the Moorish America, you are part and parcel of this government. In fact, this is the only government which you can live. This is even the said government, which lets you know that as an organization, you don't come up in here trying to overthrow the law and the Constitution. We know what your intention is with your little treason self. Okay? But that's what it is at this level. It's treason. It ain't because you're or you're slandering another brother, another sister. You're committing treason against your own government, your own nation of people. Why? Because you're doing those things instead of them freeing themselves, you're trying to re-enslave them again. Okay? No, don't believe that, sister. That's the Grand Secretary, but she ain't right. Okay? And what's the intent of that? So what we're talking about now is that human nature. Okay? This is what it is that the Moors have got to be able to rise above and realize that carnal nature, it ain't about nothing. You the master. Without you, there's nothing of it. It can't, the body, just look at your hands. Look at your feet. All right. Would they move if you didn't tell it to? All right. That lets you know about that. It's not in the power of flesh to think. That's the reason why this nature that sprang forth came forth from things they couldn't think. Now it's got you dumbed down. Okay? That's what I said it. All right? If you don't believe me, let's find out some of the attributes of the things that stop you from thinking, like irresolution. Would you, can you say you're thinking when you didn't use reason? What about the intent of your actions? No. Well, then again, it's not thinking. Okay? So it's very plain, more, very plain before the face. Now, you got to realize when the prophet speaks about these things, he speaks about reproach. He said, what reproach is reason more than the act contrarieties. So when you talk about reproach, you talking about, and write this down, you talking about things like, and I'm going to pass this lesson out to you. I'll send one email, it's out tomorrow, okay? But what reproaches reason, in other words, when you reproach something, you criticize it. You blame it. You accuse it, accusation. You scold it, you censor it, you're going to point the finger at it, okay? This is when you reproach something. In other words, you try to reverse it, try to take it back. You criticize down. If you want to reproach the Grand Sheik, you're going to start criticizing. Well, what is that? Your little reproaching you? Okay? Leave the Grand Sheik alone. All right? Now, what reproaches reason, okay? Now, you must remember where reason is at. Reason is dealing with what? These are the actions of the soul. Who gave you a soul? Who armed you? The one that armed you with resolution gave you reason. This comes from Allah. This is the reason why it's so important. Why? Because Allah was the one that took the human seed and planted into the soul of soul in order for you to do what? Grow. Okay, for you to grow. But you can't grow if you got your head all burned down into reproachment. Okay, criticizing, blaming everybody for everything, accusing people, okay, scolding stuff, censoring this, well, that ain't gonna work, pointing fingers at everything, okay? So, and this, especially when it comes to reason, reason cannot stand reproachment. Oh my goodness, why? Because that's the reverse of reason. What reproaches reason more than the act contrary? When you're contrary to a thing, that means you're in opposition to that. Man, the Grand opposition, that means you're defiant, you want to reverse it, you're stubborn, you're stiff-willed, and you're uncooperative. Okay? That's what happens when you're contrary to something. You're in opposition to that. And when you are contrary to the reason, what is it that can act to reason? What can be contrary to reason more than a reproachment? When you steady criticizing, steady blaming people, that's not using reason. Okay? That's not, when you're going in opposition to that which is divine, that which has been given to you, glorified you, like the soul of soul, in order for you to grow a pace. But you got thinking and reason, willing understanding. You must remember, once you become perfected, you will have no need for the soul of soul. Okay? Because man is only going to be perfected by the things that he suffered. So that's the reason why you're going through these lessons, because you were ignorant, you didn't know no better. And that's the reason why the prophet said, let me give y'all some holy instructions. Because y'all, I'm thinking y'all have suffered enough. And by you being a holy people, it takes holy instructions to get you out of that sinful way. Okay? This is what it is to become and be in a Moorish American on the real. Okay? So in ayah 7 it says, what reproaches reason more than act contrarieties. Okay? What can suppress the tendencies to these but firmness of mind? Okay? Now, when you look at these, what can suppress the tendency? Tendency is, when the prophet, you talk about what the bent or the inclinations. These are tendencies. Okay? What in the world is a tendency? That's when you get inclined to do something. That be careful, okay? Because it may not be something good. When you got a bent or desire that you just want to do something, okay? And the powers people, what can suppress the tendencies to these but firmness? So in other words, if you're not acting to the contrary of these, you're dealing with instability, which is the opposite of being firm, okay? So when the powers speak about firmness, he's talking about stability, constancy of mind. So if your mind is not dealing with those things that's constant, that's sturdy, that's firm, dealing with stability, if your mind, and the mind is a collection of the actions of the soul, this is the mind. In other words, your thinking, reason, willing, understanding, remembrance, collectively is put together, it's called the mind. All right? But why is the mind so unstable? It's not firm. Or why is the mind so not settled? And the reason why is because you're dealing with reproaches and contrarieties. You're going against your nature. You're supposed to use reason. That's why these tools are given to you in the first place. Oh, holy people. All right? You're supposed to think. But here in the West, we have been trained not to think. That's why we're slaves. We have suffered mental slavery because we are taught how not to think. And we're going in, if you want to deal with opposition, you want to deal with contrariety, then go according to the nature of your divinity, of the divine nature. You're designed to be God. You're supposed to be perfected. All right? Perfected man. That's what you're supposed to be. A Muslim at the highest order. Okay? Which is nothing but God is manifest in the flesh. Well, the angels and prophets are too. Okay? So if you want to find out about the angels and the prophets, just be yourself. You got the same thing they do. Okay? You're able to act and do the same thing that prophets do. The same thing that angels do. You're able to do the same thing. And all you got to do is look at the actions of the soul. And then you have a collection of them. Right? Now, we want to talk about the inconstant, and you know who you are, feeling that he changes. Oh, yeah, I'm not a Negro no more. I'm a Moorish American now. All right? But he knows not why. Okay? He sees that he escapes from himself, but he perceives not how. Again, you're talking about inconstancy. You're talking about instability, okay? Be thou capable of change, and that which is right, and men will rely upon thee. Now, what this means is this, more. Once you find out who you are, be you. Don't change, okay? It don't make sense to find out that you're a Moorish American and then act like a Negro. It just don't make sense. Why? Because you are changing, all right? You're supposed to be incapable of change. Is that which is right? Is it right for you to have one free national name? Is this right? Then why would you change to call yourself Washington? Okay? Is it right for you to be a Muslim? Then why would you change and to say you want to be a Muslim? And do the thing that Muslims do. Being capable of change if you are right. Okay? And you know if you're right because right is according to the divinity of your nature. That's what's right. All you got to do, anytime you want to question whether you're right or not, just think about who made you. Okay? Then you can establish to yourself principles of action. And the prophet gave you 5 of them. Okay? He gave you 5 principles of action. And that way, you can see that your every act is according to them. Love to peace, freedom, and justice. Okay? The prophet gave you 5 principles of action. These are not those sluggish principles. These ain't no principles that's laid around on the side somewhere, hanging up on a flag and waving outside. No. These are principles of action. In fact, if you don't believe it, we've been talking about this reason the whole class. This one of what we're talking about thinking too. These are both principles of action, okay? All right? But you're talking about thinking and reasoning. Now, where can you find this in love, truth, peace, freedom, and justice? Well, thinking and reasoning and willing, where are these? Oh, they're all right there in love. Why? Because this comes from Allah. Remember where you got the attributes from in the first place. Where did reason? He who gave you reason. So it didn't let you know where did these come from. He planted that in you so that you can ward off those enemies like instability and inconstancy and things that, okay, weakness. And you can get rid of these things if you exercise your capacity to think. All right? That's what it all boils down to. All right? So the prophet said, and then number 10, and so thy passions have no rule over thee. So shall constancy ensure unto thee the good thou possesseth, and drive from thy door misfortune, anxiety, and disappointment shall be strangers at thy gate. Now, when you look at so shall thy passions, your passion is nothing but emotions. All right, that's why we don't even deal with them. Them feelings, okay, obsessions, addictions, sentiments, okay, them false sensations. You know, the woo, baby, woo, okay, false sensations. All right, that so shall thy passion. When you get caught up in them things, all right, them carnal feelings, them emotions, because you don't like the way somebody look or somebody, or you don't like the clothes they got on or the shoes they wearing, all right? And your passion got rule over you. It's your passion to tell you what to do. Not your higher self, not divinity in you. You're not using reason. You're not thinking, okay? The passion tells you what to do. But if the passions are not there, then they should not have no rule over you. So therefore, you should have the constancy should ensure that unto thee the good thou possessest. Now you have a lot of good things about you that you actually own. You didn't borrow it, you didn't steal it, you ain't got to pay it back, it's not on lease, it's not on loan. So what is the good about you that you actually own, okay? Because being consistent, being constant, ensures you, it secures that you have acquired certain goodness, peace, and happiness about you. What is it about you that's goodness, peace, and happiness that can be assured to being constant? What is it about you? Is it not the actions of the soul? But these are the ones that they will take you from being a slave to being a God again. Okay? But being constant, not changing, is the thing that's going to assure you that you got no business looking back, or as Brother Monel said, getting off the train too soon. Brother Justice L. Bay said he gonna seal his up so he won't get off too early. Okay? So the thing about it is you can assure yourself with this as long as you remain constant. Don't look back. You know, every time you conquer one of them foes, knock it in the head, go on to the next one. Okay? Because it's your job. Ain't nobody gonna save you but you. Ain't nobody gonna free you but you. That's the same thing we say about the Moorish America that makes some people. All right? This kind of a constancy, it drives from the door of misfortune. Now, when you get talking about the door, okay, the anxiety and disappointment. A disappointment is nothing but failed expectation, boys. Okay? Failed expectation. That's what disappointments are. You can write that down. All right? If you want to talk about somebody being disappointed, that's because they was expecting something and it failed to materialize.
Yep.
Okay, and therefore they got disappointed. Failed expectations, okay? Dissatisfaction, disillusion, regret, frustration, setbacks, and failure. Okay? That's disappointment, okay? But they should be gate. All right? There should be strangers at your gates, boy. If you're dealing with the entries of the heart, this is your gates that the prophet speaks about here. Should be strangers at the gate. The entries of the heart, doorways to the soul, gateways to the mind. These are the gates that the prophet is speaking about. All right? Strangers at thy gates. What gates is he speaking about? The only gates we're talking about is what? The gate, entries to the heart. The nearest place to meet Allah. We're talking about those gates that you cannot, that's not tangible. You can't put your hand on it. All right? Doorways to the soul. Gateways to the mind. All right? This is the wonders that the prophet has bestowed upon us. All right? So we're going to be going to number 11 and 12 and the rest of these all the way through. But right now, we're going to close the class, or open the class, I'm sorry. Open the class for those who have questions or comments about tonight's. I know we didn't cover the whole chapter because we don't have enough time.